All right, everyone. Welcome to another exciting episode of Acceptable Accuracy. I am Tyler, and I am back from wherever I was because I wasn't here in the last episode.
It's true. I'm host number 2 for today. This is Philip. And last month, if you caught it, last 2 weeks ago, I should say, if you caught our episode, the inmates were running the asylum. Tyler was not around. He was busy, probably doing important things. Not to say
I
that
think I was
podcast
taking
is
a
not
nap.
important. That could be.
I'm
That's very
totally
important.
kidding. Was that VBS? No, yes, it was. It was right before VBS. That's what it was.
Yeah.
So, for
But
those who
we were,
don't know, VBS is like a kids' church event. So,
yeah, and
long
it
story short.
takes up a lot of Tyler's time, as rightly it should. But we definitely had the slack picked up by Brent and Kyle in our last episode. So we thank them again for joining us. As usual, it's always great to have them.
Mm-hmm.
So, Tyler, getting right into it, because we have a tendency to go on for a little while, which is okay. I think
I don't
it's
know what you're
fine.
talking about. It's not
We've
like
got
we just had an hour chat in the pre-show or
that is
anything like that.
true. It is true. So, for those, if you ever record a podcast before, we try not to chat that much at the beginning because then you get all the fun stuff out, right? And anyway, we have plenty of fun planned for you, but we have a lot planned. So we're going to get kind of right into it. And Tyler, what are we talking about today?
Yeah, so today's episode is going to be, I guess I would like to say it's like kind of like a two-part, two-topic discussion. It's really about our most recent matches. So, of course, in the last episode, you, Brent, and Kyle discussed a two-gun competition that was yours and Brent's first time down in another area of our state. And now today we're going to be talking about a USPSA match that we both just did, which was actually a classifier match. And then also the day after at the same club was actually a multi-gun event where where you did a two gun essentially, because it's like a modified three gun that changed to multi-gun. So now it kind of gives you that option of either doing a two gun or a three gun. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. It's kind of like just comparing, contrasting the two. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do the multi gun event because I work on Sundays. I'm a pastor, so I can't really do that, unfortunately. So, but I work,
Unless it's
yeah,
a zombie invitational.
where I specifically take vacation time. Yes, that is correct.
Yep.
So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. So I guess let's kind of go straight into it. So Phil, for those who don't know, can you explain what a classifier match is? What does that even mean to non-USPSA shooters?
So, in a lot of the shooting sports, there is a classification system that is built in based on rules specific to that sport. In the case of USPSA, there are what are called classifier stages, and those classifier stages are repeatable setup or stages that you can set up the exact same no matter what club you're at using standard equipment measurements that any kind of club would have, right? So the idea is that when you have a classification stage, you can shoot it and then you can compare your time and score, I guess your overall score, against other people. And then based on that information, USPSA as an organization classifies you D through GM or Grandmaster for your
Hmm.
classification level. Now, I will say this is probably one of the most important functions of a shooting sports body is maintaining those classifiers. So that means creating new classifiers, reclassifying the classifiers based on score as needed, and then retiring classifiers that are shot out. So anyway, when we do a classifier match, the match directors intentionally advertise it as so typically, and people will drive in from all over the place because it allows you to get fully classified in theory for the specific firearm or specific division that you want to shoot for that day. So now I believe it was normally it's 5 classifiers, and then if you're new in that division, they count your top 4 of those 5, and then whatever your score is out of that percentage wise, you go into a classification.
Hmm.
So, for example, if you shoot like 55%, or in my case, like 50 to 55% in your classifiers, then you end up as a C class. And then if you go above 60 to, what is it? Is it 60 to 70 or 75? Anyway,
74.9. That would be a B.
repeating, of course.
Hmm.
then they're in a B category, and then above that A, and then so on and so forth.
Yep. The only reason why I know that is because so that's for a new shooter. For those who already has been classified, it will be your best six of your most recent eight. Apparently, with the new way that they've done the classification system to based off of third party knowledge that I've been told. Because truthfully, I didn't even look it up. Because for those who have listened to our previous USPSA podcast, where we had a couple guys, I believe it was Paul and Thomas on, I made it very clear that I shoot for fun and that being classified's fun, but I do this more because I want to challenge myself. But I am, if I did my math right, I am now officially an A class shooter at 75.00001%.
Well, number one, congratulations by getting
Thank
there
you.
by the hair of your teeth, which is
Literally.
yes, which is an odd saying, by the way. But you made it though. So the problem is now, Tyler, whenever you go to a level 2 and above, you are now competing against all the other A class shooters, sir.
Woo hoo. So
That's what Tyler says. I don't really care.
I really
Yeah,
don't.
but you can go home with some hardware. If you had just like been at like 74.9 repeating, you could have been like, show up and be top B.
Yeah, to be all the B's, yeah. For the A's, I'll just be bottom of A. I'll take it.
uh,
But
it's still better than B. So nice job, man.
thank you. I appreciate it. So I guess so speaking of a classifier match, so I guess for you, Phil, how does it feel going into a classifier match? Like knowing that this is a match where it's going to be majority classifiers. This is what's going to, I guess, define your score. Like, do you have a change in mindset? Do you train differently? Do you prepare differently? Or just like, it's just any other match?
So I will say for this one, actually, this is the first classifier I've had a chance to shoot at South Kent
Really?
in the last like probably 3 years. I think since Brent and Daryl took it over,
Okay.
because I'm usually gone. It's usually the same weekend as Father's Day, and
That's
I'm usually
right.
gone that weekend on a vacation that we schedule every year for another hobby that I have. So honestly, coming into this, I just didn't really have much time to prepare because I was busy working on that other hobby that I have, which, yes, I understand shooting is like a full time hobby for a lot of people,
It's so true.
but I do other things that's also unfortunately very expensive. Anyway, um, so I was busy getting prepared for that. So honestly, I didn't even look at the stages until I think the night before because they posted the classifiers. Kind of knowing where I was at going into it, I didn't put a ton of practice into it, to be honest, just because
Hmm.
my head is elsewhere. I'm focusing on other style matches, which is why we're talking about multigun for today as
Hmm.
well. So this is actually a really great question.
Yeah.
But had I been thinking about it, I probably would have dry fired, at least practiced the stages. Maybe not necessarily have set it up. I've got some of the small like targets that you can buy, sort of
Oh,
practicing for dry fire at home
yep.
that simulate different ranges based on the size of the target. Anyway,
Yep.
so honestly, I kind of treated it like you do, Tyler. I didn't really do anything in advance of it, and it shows.
Yeah. Yeah.
For
What's interesting?
myself, that is for myself.
Yeah, no, no, no. I get that. Well, what's interesting is because, of course, you and I we had lunch the day before, and our other buddy Paul came too a little later on to join us. And of course, I know Paul. I one thing I really respect about Paul is he clearly practices, he clearly dry fires, he studies, and he prepares for these matches. I know him and Thomas really do that, and I have
Yeah.
heavy respect for the two. And it's just like I was like, yeah, I've already gone through. I've looked at them, and he looked at me and said, Tyler, three of the five like scream your name. I'm like, what are you talking
Mm-hmm.
about? So of course I got curious, and I like because I know Brendan Darrell. They actually posted the stages, or at least the five classifier stages, on Practice Score, so I was able to kind of take a look at it. I was like, the irony is like I was like, I kind of looked. I was like, what does any of this even mean? So I glanced at it. I was like, okay, because I'm such a visual kinesthetic learner. So for me, I'm just like, whatever. And then when I finally got to see a day of, I'm like, okay, I see what you mean. Like that was crazy because I think there are two. Well, unfortunately, one of them did have to got thrown out because we used the wrong size poppers. But but two of the five classifiers, I literally got the best score for limited optics. So
That's awesome.
I know. I was like, what the heck? But then there also, but there were like other stages, man. There was one classifier stage where something else kind of happened. I got in my own head, and I literally got a 0. So it's a good thing they take your best 6 out of most recent 8, right?
Well, that's like the whole zero hero or zero like complex, right? Like I'm gonna crush this thing or I'm gonna get a zero.
It's so true. It's like if you're not first, you're last.
And I will say though, like the really good shooters have been doing this for a really long time. The masters and grandmasters.
Hmm.
That really put a lot of time in this. They're not necessarily gonna like mess up on a classifier. Though it does happen. I've actually watched Max Michel on a stage at the Area 5 match completely like tank a stage. I think he zeroed it out. So it does
Really?
happen. And I will say that there is a fine line. I bring that up because there is a fine line between going really stinking fast and getting a great score and getting a zero.
Oh,
Because
dude, so
sometimes like
true.
if you're on, your draw is good and your grip is good, and you're on and your target acquisition is really good, then you're gonna drop, like a classifier like you did, or if you're off just by a slightly little amount, like something's
Hmm.
not quite right, and I can't speak for you, Tyler, on this, but then you can get a zero because you miss targets or you hit no shoots.
I mean
Um,
that's definitely, at least for that one specific stage, that is what happened. Because with that one was actually it was a Virginia count as well. And for those who don't know, a Virginia count essentially means whatever the round count is, you have to hit that round count. You cannot take any makeup shots. So if this stage is only like 20 shots, you can only take 20. If you take any extras, that'll be a procedural. Versus a comp stock means you can take as many makeup shots as you want.
Yeah, and
So
I'll add too with Virginia that the number of shots that you take are supposed to correspond with the target as well too.
yes,
So
exactly.
if it's always paper as well.
Yep.
You never put steel on a Virginia count stage, but if the stage calls for 2 shots on paper, you're doing 2 shots on paper. You're not doing 3 on one and 1 on the other. You'll get procedural if you do that.
Hmm. Exactly. So with that one specific stage for me, like I forgot because I stepped aside for something else and I came back and I did the stage, and of course I stepped aside for a while and I took literally the very first target. I took 3 shots. I'm like, you're kidding me. And just like what Phil
Yeah,
said, you can only take two. So literally got in my head. I didn't even care anymore. And I literally just booked it from there. And I just went as fast as I could, just went. I think I got like 3 mics and a no shoot on that. And I was like, whatever. And a procedural. So that was one of those things where, was that the right thing to do? Probably not. Did I do it? Yeah. So
well,
I guess go
in,
for it.
I was gonna say, kind of going back to your original question about the difference that it makes for people when they practice or knowing what the classifiers are going into the stage or into the
Hmm.
match.
Yep.
If you know them, then that does present the possibility of reproducing them at home. However, unless you can get the distances accurate, the targets accurate, or at least close, and if you're a really fast shooter, it's actually a chance that it could mess you up. Because if
Hmm.
you're expecting it to take X amount of steps to get from point A to point B, or you're expecting the target presentation to be at a certain spot, and you have it memorized,
Hmm.
if you're running through that in your head, you have the possibility of really messing it up. And I will
Yeah,
say, maybe not as bad on USPSA, but on Steel Challenge, we've done state matches before where we've had really good shooters complain that something was off by like an inch or something like that
that's insane to me.
because they're so used to running and their mind or their like I forget the term, but their ability to connect the location of the firearm and your like acquiring a target is muscle memory. That's what I was looking for.
I was
It's
literally
all
about to say that.
Yep, it's all muscle memory. So if you build the muscle memory and expect it to be in one place and it's not, then you could potentially cause yourself some problems.
That is
Now,
really
again, USPSA maybe not quite as much as Steel Challenge, but definitely shows up on Steel Challenge.
yeah, that makes sense. I do know. I remember there was one stage that we were, what's it called, air gunning. Is that what it's called? Where you're
That's
kind of
accurate. Yeah. Yep.
just walking through the stage. And I remember where like I was chatting, I think with you, with Paul and Thomas. We're thinking like, all right, so the four of us were literally like debating how we were going to tackle the stage. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll go this way. And literally, I remember Paul just saying, it's 6 steps going left, 10 steps right. I'm like, what? You counted? It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. I mean, I guess I've just never really thought of that for me personally. I just don't think of that. But I know for them, like, once again, I'm just going to brag on Thomas and Paul. Like, they really like to plan it. They think I know because with classifiers, they tell me they actually look it up online and they'll watch better shooters actually do the
Hmm.
classifier. I'm like, huh, which makes sense
Yeah.
because these are classifiers. So this is consistent nationwide. So it makes sense that it's all out there.
If you could, no one's like physically going to match exactly to somebody else. But if you had somebody that had the same shooting style as you and the same stature,
Hmm.
then in theory you could kind of get close and you could find out. Or another thing I'll say is if you get enough people, enough professionals that you're watching and they're shooting it the same way and they're all doing it the same way, they're all stepping the same way, they're all moving the same way, then the really chances that's probably the best way to shoot the stage. So there
Yeah.
is, I would say, they're definitely watching footage in advance. There are definitely some advantages to that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I even think of like let's look at professionals. Like that's what like not even just with sports in general. Like you look at football and basketball and how that's what they do. They look at game tapes.
That's true.
So
That is actually
it's
really true. Yeah.
so how understand is like, oh yeah, I guess that makes sense because once again, this is a competition. It is a game, so you're gaming it. So it's being able to create, even if it gives you a 1% better chance. Because even though what's interesting is I did exceptionally well with four of the five, three actually, yeah, three, which is what Paul called actually three of the five classifiers. But if you look at my score, I literally either did really, really good or really, really bad in this previous match. I got like 44th out of like 92nd, which I mean, it's still right in the middle, if not barely top half. But like, I was just like, dude. But then I look at like everyone else. Like, I think Paul got like 17th, Thomas got like 20 something. Of course, Kyle got 10th. Brent, I think, got 25th. So I'm like, dude, wow. Granted, I did have another stage called that we just so lovingly called the desert, where I went to war against the popper. It was great, and had a
Yeah,
few
that
mics.
it happens.
I know.
Um, and it's funny because you'll run through a whole stage and you'll do super well. You'll hit far targets, you'll hit far steel, and then for some reason something just haywires in your brain, and you're like, I just took 5 shots at one piece of steel.
It was insane. Yeah, because I literally
Yes.
I was able to drop poppers at like 20, 25 yards, no issues. But
Yep.
this stinking popper at 10 yards, I couldn't hit it. I'm like, what is going on? I could hear Brent in the background saying, "What?" It was actually, I was like, what? That was just hilarious to me. Like I could hear that.
Yeah.
So, but
So I guess that being said,
mhm.
how did your gear perform?
I'd say overall went pretty well. So, so one thing I have a very, very bad habit of doing is, or I guess not doing, is cleaning and prepping my guns.
Hmm.
I clean my guns. I think I clean my guns once a year typically, or at least my pistol. Who am I kidding? My guns, and it's usually after like a big match, like a big match where I'm like outside, like in sand and dirt, like the Zombie Invitational or like the Wolverine 5K.
Right.
US, USPSA, not really. Just regular shooting, not really. The irony is, I used to be religious about cleaning, where I cleaned my guns after every single time I shot. Even if I only shot like 10 rounds, I would clean my gun. So, and then after a while, I was like, nah, I'm good. So, all that to say, with my pistol, I decided to uh, off-body carry my pistol during one of the events at my church, and it was a it was a water night. So, my believe it or not, I have a little bit of rust on my slide, and I still haven't cleaned it off yet. I should probably do that. So, all that to say, yeah, my gun was got a little wet, but it ran great to the best of my knowledge. I probably could have looped it up a little more, but other than that, I was fine. What about you, Phil? How'd your gear ran, bro?
Yeah.
Yeah, how'd it run, dude?
So I've shot quite a bit, and overall, and I like either for fun or matches or whatever. And I usually don't have gear problems, but
I
this
know.
match I had 3 issues, one of which was my own problem.
Yep.
And then the other two, I created the problem and then fixed it for the next day. But I think it was stage one. I drew my pistol, and I'm actually still not sure, and I need to review the footage on that one again. I drew my pistol, and the mag dropped out of my gun, which either means that I did not fully seat the magazine, which is possible, or I hit the mag release on my draw. And I keep
Mhm.
forgetting because I have the mag release my draw is like huge and it sticks really far out. And whenever I
Mhm.
shoot with my non-dominant hands, I have issues with it like dropping the mags. I have to hold it just a certain way.
Mhm.
I have big hands. I really don't know why I have such a large magazine release like on the pistol that I have because it comes with a smaller one, and I don't have a problem hitting it. It's right there, so I need to switch that out. So it's possible I hit it.
When when you got that gun, did it
Yeah,
already have the big one in there, or did
it
you switch
did.
it to the
I
okay,
did not. It's how it came, and I think they set
got
it up
it.
for people that have smaller hands intentionally.
Yeah.
But it does come with a replacement, and I know for a fact that the core has a shorter one, and I've never had issues with the core, which is my old Smith and
Mhm.
Wesson. So basically, the same set of pistol. One is a polymer frame, one is an aluminum frame.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
No, I mean, I
yeah,
think of same thing. I know I've
yep,
shot your gun before, and because I'm a lefty, every single time I shoot your gun, mag drops like without
yeah,
fail.
yep. It's just a clearance thing. So
Mhm.
if I have time tonight after I add the podcast and upload it for tomorrow, I'm gonna actually swap it out.
Nice, my man.
So issues with that, and then I typically like my biggest fear is running a firearm that's not fully oiled. The
Mhm.
oil I use the Hoppies just straight up oil. I don't use it's not like they have like a cleaner slash oil. I don't use that to oil my gun. I use Hoppies number 9 to clean it, but I
Yep.
use their oil because I found that in general I just don't have issues when I use it.
Mhm.
Doesn't matter what the weather is, if it's cold or hot or whatever, and it does a pretty good job of not attracting dust. The
That's
only thing I
awesome.
will say is that it does tend to burn off a lot quicker than maybe some other lubes that are more of like a gooey kind of lube. Because this is more
Mm.
of like it's pretty it's got a pretty good high viscosity. I think it's
Oh
the
yeah.
anyway. I cleaned my gun and then I actually oiled areas that I don't normally oiled, and I think I over oiled around the plunger and the striker channel,
Gotcha.
and I had at least 2 times that I can remember on 2 of the stages, including one of the classifiers where I got a dead trigger.
Mhm.
So I went to pull I went to pull the trigger and then nothing. So I ended up like racking it again, and then it worked fine, but that costs time, especially on the classifier.
Mhm.
And then that kind of
For
gets in my head because I
yeah.
don't like it when my gear doesn't run because I'm like, wow, what's wrong? Is there a problem with the gun? And then fortunately, I kind of realized that it was probably an issue with over oiling in certain areas. So I kind of let that go in my brain. I was like, oh, that's the problem. And then that evening, I came home, stripped the whole firearm again, cleaned the crap out of areas that probably I shouldn't have oiled as much, and it ran just fine the next day.
That's awesome. No, that's definitely just really important. I know you and I were talking about this too in the pre-show. How we have to be. I know for me personally, I have to be really careful of not allowing like a bad stage to affect the rest of my day, or like one bad day, whether it's like gear malfunctioning or something else. So it's just having to kind of like figure, maybe
Yeah.
like adjust, adapt, and kind of just move on.
Well,
So, but it's
and it was funny.
frustrating.
Yeah. It was funny though, because it was legitimately very hot the last 2 days
Oh, dude,
for
it
both the
sucked.
matches. Like we ended both days, we're in the 90s. Fortunately,
It's
there
like
was
a
a bit of
regular day in
wind.
Texas, man.
I know, right? Fortunately, and it was very humid too, so
I
that doesn't
know.
help either.
Mhm.
Fortunately, we did have a bit of a wind that was coming through the whole time, so it could have been a lot worse. But it was really hot, and I think honestly, as much as I hate the heat, it does really make you focus on things like hydrating, and you're trying to like not not pass out because we've had somebody on the
Yeah.
podcast before who has passed out and due to heat issues. We won't say who it is.
Yep.
And anyway, so you always have that concern in the back of your mind. So I think that for me anyway, I'm so focused on constantly drinking, making sure that I feel okay, that I don't usually get in my head as much for a match like this. But then sometimes I wonder, like, am I worrying too much about like staying hydrated and not focused enough on the match?
Mhm.
So I did change that up on day 2 a little bit. Just I knew that the amount of liquid I was taking in, if I could mimic that in day 2, I would be fine. I wouldn't have to think about it anymore. And that actually helped quite a bit.
That makes sense. Yeah,
Weird
no.
things that get in your brain. Everybody's different. So I'm sure
It's
somebody
true.
will be like, they'll say, like, that's dumb. I'm like, well, maybe it is. But
Mhm.
maybe you're concerned about sharks in the pool. I don't know.
We don't need to share my number one most irrational fear of the world, but sure.
I wasn't gonna say it was.
It is true. I am terrified of sharks in the swimming pool. My second
Mine
most
is
irrational. What's up?
oh go ahead.
No, I was gonna say my first most irrational fear is that. My second most irrational fear is land sharks. literally sharks that just grow legs and just chase you. That
Hmm.
terrifies me.
Is it because you grew up in Hawaii?
Yes, I grew up in Hawaii and I watched way too many shark movies as a kid.
Well, that's fair. I have not seen Jaws yet.
Are you
It's like
serious?
no, it's like the 50th anniversary of it too.
That's crazy.
My number one irrational fear is earwigs underneath the toilet seat.
Oh,
Like,
interesting.
yeah, like having to go to the bathroom and then they're there
Hmm.
and they crawl on you and they
Oh
pinch your butt.
man, that's actually really funny.
Yeah, I had it happen once in my life when I was like 8, and I had to still think about it. So
Oh
I still
man,
check to this day.
that's amazing.
Oh, that's funny.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess kind of moving on, kind of moving on,
Back on subject.
but yeah, I know, right? Back on subject. So speaking of, so USPSA, I know we kind of talked about like our oops moments, our highs,
Yeah.
our lows. We talked about kind of like leading up to the classifier. So do you feel like your classifier performance reflected your current skill?
Yeah, I would say so. I am
Really?
not
You
I
think
don't
so?
well, okay,
I feel like this specific classifier, you typically are a better shooter than how you performed.
maybe. Um, I haven't really been focusing on I don't dry fire a lot, and I know, and that's something I keep saying I gotta improve on. And actually, we're doing our next episode's gonna be on dry fire. And I actually asked Tyler if we could do that for this episode, but we opted to bring two other people on to the next episode that do a ton of dry firing. And dry firing really can get you very far. And it's something that I know I need to work on. The problem is I've never had like maybe it's just lack of looking, and I have searched before, but like having a really good regimented like dry fire program is something
Yep.
that I have not found. I've bought different books and stuff, and nothing really like registered with me. And again, this is not an excuse, but I definitely focused a ton on other hobbies. Like I literally was on vacation the weekend before this match, and then right into shooting, and they're two completely different hobbies. So I was
Hmm.
kind of like not really. Normally, like if I go before a classifier match, I'll go out and try to shoot that week before or the weekend before just to like practice draws, that kind of stuff, and get out on the range. But this time around, I definitely did not. So
Hmm.
I will say that that is on me, and I think that the way that I performed, other than some issues with equipment, which I just you can't like it happens, you can't deal with it.
No, for sure. Yeah,
Yep.
that
Other than
just
that,
that sucks.
other than that, I did just fine, and I actually compared my scores roughly to my other classifier recent scores, and they're about the same with the ones that
Gotcha.
I didn't have malfunctions on.
Okay. So interesting. So funny enough, I was actually looking at my USPSA account, and I am no longer. Actually, never mind. I wasn't even ever a carry optics. I don't think I was ever even carry optics classified
Well, that's funny.
because I just didn't shoot enough classifiers or whatever. So
So
now I'm limited optics and I'm a A class or about to be because it's not
yeah,
official yet because it's still processing.
sure. So I'll ask you the same question then, Tyler. How do you feel about your performance, based like on your current skill level and how you did in the match?
I mean, I feel like my classifiers were a lot like because I have my strengths and my weaknesses, so I know what I am good at. I'm fast on my feet. I have great draws. I have great reloads. I have great site acquisition and transitions because that's what I practice. That's what I focus on. So, because of that, three of the five classifiers, I blew it out of, like, I hit it out of the park. So it was definitely in my comfort zone, but other areas or like everything else, like kind of just showed me where I need to improve on. So I don't know if personally, I don't think I deserve a class. I feel like I am still more a B class, maybe a high B. So that's kind of, so I feel like I'm definitely, my classifier was better than what I believe to be because another reason why Phil, when you brought up, when you asked me earlier, hey, let's record on dry fire, I said I didn't feel like I am, and I felt like I was more of an expert before because all I did was try. Granted, what I dry fired was what I practice: draws, reloads, transitions, and all that. So I just feel like we have other buddies who are more experts in it, and I haven't really consistently dry fired in a very long time. And I think maybe because I just find it boring now. So, which is why maybe I should get a cool fire trainer because I keep talking about it and I feel like that would make it a lot more fun and having a laser. And yeah, because I mean, I guess I can't say much because I have a mantis for my AR, and that was fun for a while. Now I haven't touched it in a while either.
Oh,
So
interesting. Huh.
yeah,
I one thing I am actually going to look into, and I'm gonna try to look into it between now and our next episode we record, though it's
yeah,
not a ton of time necessarily, is there is a VR trainer, a virtual reality
I have
trainer.
heard of that. Hmm.
So my wife a few years back won an Oculus 2, I think it is, and it supports that whole system. There's like a I don't know if it's 3D printed or they molded like pistol that you can use. Anyway, so it's supposed to help you simulate shooting as well. Like obviously it's not going to be exactly, but
Hmm.
they actually have all the classifiers in there, so you can
Oh
shoot those
wow.
classifiers. So I forgot to mention it earlier when we were talking about practicing for the classifiers. And I grew up playing video games. I don't play nearly as much as I used to. My son and I play every once in a while, and
Hmm.
then I play with some friends periodically, but not nearly as much. But the gamification of practice is something that my brain likes, so I'm tempted to give that a whirl
Hmm.
before the next episode. We'll see if I have time or not, but
For sure.
maybe Sunday.
Okay. Yeah, no, dude,
So
that's really awesome. I didn't realize that it
yeah,
had all the classifiers as well on top of it.
yeah.
So, okay. So I guess let's go ahead and kind of move on. Let's transition from
Well,
USPSA to art. You got
yeah,
something else?
yeah. I was
Go
just
for it.
curious about your like whole general thought of the match overall before kind of we move on. Again, congratulations on getting A. That's a really big deal.
Based off
And
of my calculations. So
correct.
if my math
If
is
not, you're
right,
really close, and you'll just hit the rock out the next one. You'll get it.
yeah, I guess so. Yep. So all that's so yes, I'd say overall the match was a ton of fun. Applause to Brent and Daryl for all their hard work for prepping for USPSA and all and everything. And we're definitely really thankful for that. I'd say overall, I had a blast. I know we had another guy, another one of our buddies, shoot that was his very first time shooting USPSA, and I know he had a blast as well. So he basically, I think after like the third stage, like guys, this is so addicting.
Yeah.
So it was so much fun.
Yeah, and I will say too. So Brent and Daryl took over the match direction. I think maybe it's 3 years ago now.
I believe so. Yeah.
It sounds about right. And took it over from Dale, who did a very good job with it as well. And I think like gave them really good like base to start off with. And Brent and Daryl have kind of taken it from there and moved it up. We consistently sell out the match at like 8 stages with 90 plus people,
Yep.
which is crazy. We are the number one attended club in Michigan for matches, which is crazy because you have to think about the east side, right? Like we're not on
Hmm.
the east side of the state, and those matches don't consistently sell out like we do.
Hmm.
And I think it's a testament to again the work that Dale put in, the work that Brent and Daryl put in
Hmm.
today. And it was interesting because they were trying to correct a problem with the poppers that we had. And I only bring this up because I want to explain how the differences between like a good match director and a good set of leaders versus like a bad match director, a bad set of leaders.
Hmm.
They were trying to fix an issue where when you shoot our large poppers, there's like a little arm that holds the popper from falling down before you shoot it. And then when you shoot the large popper, the popper moves back just enough where that little arm will drop and then the popper can fall free. The setup is pretty good. They discover there's an issue with it where the same material that they were using, and rightfully so, because it's a bulletproof steel, for the poppers was the same material that they were using for the little foot that keeps the thing up. Well, what would happen is over the day with enough shooting, and I'm not a metallurgist, so I don't understand how this fully works, but the both steels would become magnetized to each other because they're the same type of steel.
Oh, interesting.
Yep. So they switched over to aluminum, like little aluminum, like flippers, feet, whatever you want to call them, to try to remedy the issue. Because I guess with what Thomas was saying, because he works with metal, if you have two different metals, they will not magnetize to each other, especially aluminum, right? The problem is, so they had all these made. The problem is they found too late that the aluminum was bending and causing issues with the poppers. So they had to like them and setup team had to quickly swap all those little feet on there.
So, based off of what I heard, I believe both Kyle and Thomas said this is not only was it aluminum, it was actually aluminum coated, and the inside was like just some type of like hard plastic, and
Oh,
they
I didn't
didn't,
know that part.
and they didn't realize
Interesting.
that, and
Yeah.
that's what caused them to bend, like literally within like the first 15 minutes of the match. Like we almost every stage had to like shut down because they had to replace
Yep.
these parts. So it was just yeah. But all to say, like just like what Phil's saying, definitely a testament to Brandon Darrell and just the leadership that they have because being a leader is hard and
Yeah.
problem solving is hard because I think of how, of course, you and I are also leaders in our fields and how there are people who are very smart, like very high IQ, but they have no idea how to problem solve. It's like
Hmm.
they'll see a problem, it's like, well, it's just not working. It's like, then fix it, figure it out. you know, that's why you're here. So that's why I just heavy respect for them. They figured it out, and the rest of the match, I guess, to the best of my knowledge, of course, I don't know. I felt like everything else went great.
Yeah, I
So,
think so.
mhm.
And I know they were both pretty upset about that fact, and most shooters were like, "That's fine." Like they were
Yeah,
trying to solve a problem, right? And it didn't work, and that's fine. And they fixed it, and they got it fixed really quick.
exactly.
Most people were just like, "Oh, we had a little bit of a hiccup." I think we finished the match almost on time, like compared to what we normally do. And granted, the stage a little bit shorter because they were classifiers,
Yeah,
but
that's a good point.
nobody complained or cared.
No.
But they definitely took that as like a takeaway, like, "Hey, we can do better than this."
Yes.
And again, it's kind of out of their control, but I do appreciate that about those guys. So if they're
Agreed.
listening to this episode, we really appreciate you guys. I know you're going to beat yourself up over it, but again, thanks for everything that you guys do.
For sure. So yeah, thank you too, and everyone else that's kind of just helps with the leadership setup, etc.
Yep.
So, but all right. So now moving
Yeah.
on, day one, classifier USPSA. I participated in that, but now day two is multi-gun. So Phil, you shot the multi-gun match the next day.
Did.
What was
Yep.
that transition like going from USPSA, where it's more pistol based, speed, accuracy, just pedal to the metal, to where, in your words, a multi-gun that has more of like an IDPA style.
Yeah. So this multi gun that we run at our club is an outlaw multi gun, which basically we've covered this before, so I'll be very brief. Basically means that we set our own rules and we run it that way, and we don't really have any body that is over the sport. Like USPSA, the body that runs it is called USPSA. Same thing
Hmm.
with IDPA, right? Like there's a board and a body that runs the whole thing, whereas our club has its own set of rules. So this number one, you're not only are you switching from pistol, rifle, and then potentially shotgun if you decided to shoot all three, um, but you are also switching the way the rules are handled. They use USPSA targets, which I really like because that makes the
Hmm.
transition a little bit easier,
Yep.
especially because the matches are run back to back. So I think people that do USPSA one day and do multi-gun the next day are like, okay, these are the same similar targets, but they have different rules on the way that you neutralize a target. It's one shot to the A zone neutralizes the target, so that's like the center of the chest of the target, and then they count the entire head box as the A zone in
Gotcha.
multi-gun. So you literally, if you can shoot accurately enough, you only need to take one shot at the target. But if you decide to, you take multiple shots at the target. Let's say you're like, that's pretty far away, or it's got a little bit like there's no shoot too close to the A zone, and now you can take two shots in the C zone. That also counts as neutralizing the target.
Okay.
So both ways, you don't lose points on it, which is really interesting, different way of doing things. And then also, if you're shooting 40 cal, which I did not, or 45, if you get a C zone hit and you only get a C zone hit, that still counts as neutralizing the target because you're limited to the capacity because the diameter of the bullet is larger and you can fit less in a magazine.
Hmm. That makes sense.
Yep, but the same thing. Like if you're shooting a 308 rifle, one shot in C zone counts as a neutralizing the target. If you're shooting 5.56, it one shot in the A zone is required, or two shots in the C zone or C and D zone. Anyway, so the rules
Hmm.
are a little bit different. They like to do a lot of partial covered targets, a lot of hard covered targets, maybe way more so than USPSA does. And then obviously you're
Hmm.
switching between two firearms, right?
Yep.
So you're having to get into a little different like processing in your head. I will say visually, if you are a visual processor, it's not as bad because again, you're using the same targets. I will say they do stuff every once in a while where they'll mix in a metric target, which are like the IPSC targets, which are
Got it.
they look like little blobs, and they'll
Hmm.
mix those in just to mess with you every once in a while because
That's messed up.
the A zones are totally different at that, and then they like to cover the A zones with no shoots. so that you have to like think in your head while you're going through, I should probably take 2 shots in this because the A zone is tiny compared to
Hmm.
like a normal USPSA target based on how it's covered.
That makes sense.
So that transition was a little weird. And then it was hot again the next day as well
Yeah.
too. I opted to shoot this match as 2 gun in practice for the Badger Trekker that's coming up, and just kind of run the equipment, make sure everything was where I was at with that, just make sure I felt comfortable. And again, they at Badger they like to use a lot of small targets as well.
Hmm.
But again, when the way that you're shooting is by only shooting 1 shot and it's accurate, then you only need to take 1 shot. You don't need to take that second shot. So for me, in the way that I like to shoot, or not like to shoot, the way I guess I'm better at shooting, I can make those accurate shots. My target acquisition may not be as fast as, definitely not as fast as somebody like Tyler, but I have that because I have a little bit extra time. I'm not always, but I can be more accurate, especially at distance. So that kind of shooting really, like is benefits the way that like in my score. So actually, I think I was looking at the scores for USPSA and I was 51 out of 92 on the day for USPSA, which is not great and honestly like pretty bad.
Hmm.
But then for multi-gun, I was 4 out of 19.
Oh wow.
So yeah, so it's a way different, right? Like, and granted, like I shot a lot of rifle,
I was
so
gonna
that tends to
say you
help.
are
Yep.
definitely a better rifle shooter than you are a pistol shooter, which I know I'm the opposite. I'm a better pistol shooter than I'm a rifle shooter.
And we went through this in a few episodes before too, but we transitioned over to red dots. And I'll tell you, Tyler, like going from the LPVO to red dot in this match was way different, like massive improvement.
Hmm.
It's amazing how like you're again, it comes down to your brain, the way that it functions, the way that you're good at acquiring targets. And for me, it's like it's sucked into that red dot. And
Yep,
obviously, you're supposed to be target focused or whatever, but like it immediately shows up for me. So I know exactly what I'm looking at.
that's
And,
awesome.
and even when we were shooting the last 2 gun at like 200 yards, it was fine. Like I really had no problems with it whatsoever. We'll see
That-
beyond that how well it does, but
yeah, because I'm trying to remember what magnification power is your magnifier?
it's a 5x. So it
It
actually
is
does
okay.
pretty decent. And then because it's adding more layers of glass, it actually helps a bit with my astigmatism
Gotcha.
when
I
I
do
put
know
that.
because right now I've got a 3x, and I'm definitely, I will admit, I am eyeballing a 6x because if I
Yeah,
don't get a
don't blame you.
6x before the zombie, I might have to switch back to LPVO just because of
Right.
I just don't feel like a 3x is going to be adequate for what I need for the zombie.
Yep. No, I would agree with that. It is definitely more difficult, and it's that balance we always talk about, right? Like speed versus accuracy, and it just
Hmm.
used to shooting the red dot. So my rifle shooting was really good on that day. That rifle just shoots lights out. Again, small equipment changes. I put in a very short, stubby uh, vertical grip on it, and I just for some reason like my grip on my rifle is way better now.
Hmm.
So I don't
Yeah.
move around as much, and it's just
Yep.
that all helps, right?
It's crazy. I know. Like, of course, I have the exact or a very similar one on mine. I have an angled foregrip. That's what mine is. I know it's very similar to yours, and I know you're like,
Yeah.
dude, I get it now. I'm like,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And it's crazy that just a small thing like that makes such a big difference. But the way that I grip it, because you get a lot more hand on it on the front of your
Hmm.
rifle, and it really holds it back into your shoulder. So your follow up shots are a lot better as well, too. And I don't feel like it's moving around nearly as much.
Exactly.
So
Like,
small,
it
and
makes a difference.
yeah, people say that like, it's not the bow, it's the Indian
Oh, it's
or
not the
Native
Indian; it's
American,
the
the
arrow,
arrow, whatever. Yeah.
or it's not the yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, I just
Anyway,
messed it up. It's not the Indian. Is
it,
yeah. It's not the. It's the Indian, not the arrow. That's what it was. Yeah.
but everybody's bodies are built in the way that they hold things and the way that their muscles are built are all a bit different. And if you can figure out what
Hmm.
works for you, honestly, sometimes small changes can just enhance your skills.
Yeah, which now I think I know with you with such large hands too, it's probably nice to have that. So it gives a
It
little
is.
more real estate. Because of course you don't grip for the grip, you use it more as like a hand stop, but it allows
Yeah.
you to kind of do like a nice C clamp, but still be able to kind of rest probably like your middle finger down to your pinky on top of that. So because I'm kind of mad
Yeah.
because that's how I hold it. So
Yep. That's a great call out. And that is actually accurate because I've tried shorter hand stops before, but it doesn't, I lose like my pinky, my ring finger on
oh
the bottom
yeah.
of it. So I'm really only gripping it with like my 3 other fingers.
Hmm. So it defeats the
So,
purpose of it.
right. So having just a little bit longer helps a ton. And then honestly, like there were some stages too where we were shooting off of a prop, and
Mm-hmm.
being able to stick that into the prop to help also like stabilize a
Yep.
bit was really helpful too. So
Yep.
I haven't found a downside yet. Maybe when I run the Badger, it'll jab me, but I don't know.
There you go. That's awesome.
I don't know.
Oh man. So of course now, so when comparing USPSA to multi-gun, is what's the gear difference between the two? Of course, now you go from a pistol to pistol and rifle. Is there anything else that changes?
Yeah. So depending on the multi-gun, your gear will vary. A lot of like USPSA actually runs a multi-gun, and the
Oh, really?
equipment, yeah, the equipment that you'll see is very similar. Where and I don't want to speak for this 'cause I've never shot USPSA multi-gun before, but you could probably get away with a holster that doesn't have as much retention as a lot of the other multi-guns. Because the multi-gun that we shoot, again, for example, on one of the stages in the desert, we were actually kneeling and shooting off of a barricade. And if you were using a USPSA holster, depending on what your retention is, there's a good chance that your pistol will flop out because you're starting a
Interesting.
stage with your pistol on your hip,
Mm-hmm.
and you're shooting rifle first, and then you transition to pistol, which again, similar to other things like Wolverine and Zombie, you have the risk of dumping your pistol on the ground because there's no retention, and then you're DQ'd.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I wear my Zombie Invitational / Wolverine 5K like battle belt setup for that, and most
Mm-hmm.
people do. Most people will run some kind of safari land holster that has that level 2 plus retention on it.
Yep.
So that's a little bit different. Obviously, running rifle, so you need to have a pouch for a rifle mag or two on your belt. I run a dump pouch. I find that because I'm loading two pistols, I almost always put pistol and rifle. I almost always put my mags that I'm starting with in the dump pouch, because a lot of times they like to like download your magazines to like 5, for example. There's multiple stages that were like that,
Mm-hmm.
and that way you know what the mags are that you need to load to start, so you don't accidentally get a procedural.
Gotcha.
Plus, it holds safe space on your belt for other things.
Are
So, other than
you
that, go ahead.
are you wearing like a chest rig or a plate carrier at all, or is it just belt?
So I actually started the day with a chest rig on,
Oh,
again,
okay.
getting ready to practice for the Badger Trekker. But I made a decision. It was day 2 of shooting in the sun. I made a decision that that was just going to potentially create just enough heat to kind of like cause problems. So I
Mm-hmm.
opted to take it off pretty quick, just out of like the overall concern of not, again, getting overheated and passing out.
That makes
Mad
sense.
credit to Britt and Daryl; they ran their plate carriers the whole day.
Holy
They
cow,
didn't
good
have
for
plates in
them.
them, but
Wow.
they did run
Even
them the whole
then,
day. Yep.
wow, good for them.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know if I could do that.
No.
But okay. So what's harder then? So you're looking at the two, USPSA and
Yeah.
two gun. What's harder? Fast reloads and with the movements of USPSA, or like the platform transitions and the complexity, having to go between two guns, of course, more retention of two gun or multi gun, I guess.
So I will say, from the perspective of USPSA being so fast
Hmm.
and so accurate, that is the difficulty with it, right? Because it's
Yep.
not necessarily a gear difficulty thing, because you're
Yep.
only dealing with one platform, right? Pistol
Yeah.
or PCC. And that's it for the entire day. And everything tends to be like a race setup, so everything is super smooth. Your draws are going to be really fast. Your magazines are going to pull out quick. But again, the difficulty is you are having to go so fast on those, right? Multi-gun, obviously, because you're using up to 3 different firearms platforms with pistol, rifle, and shotgun. It does add a lot of complexity in your stages, because you'll run a whole stage a lot of times with your like rifle first, right? Then you dump it into a dump barrel. You have to make sure they have the safety on, otherwise it's an instant DQ. So from a safety perspective, you're also working on those things in your brain. So you
Hmm.
run the whole stage with the rifle first, and then you have to run the whole thing again with your pistol, and then typically you're engaging different targets.
Hmm.
So you have to be able to balance the two of those. Now, I am not great at memory stages. Like that's not my jam. I like linear, straightforward stages. So I actually like multi-gun because it forces me to think about those things more so, and kind of like improves my ability in complex stages, right?
Gotcha. Hmm.
But the other flip side of that is the stages you can go a little bit slower because there's a lot of complexity. Most people are slowing it down just a little bit, and then that combined with the fact that you only need to get a single A zone shot to neutralize, you can slow down a little bit, take your time to think, get your A zone shots while you're doing it, and still get a really good score, which is basically what I did.
Hmm.
So there were definitely stages I was very fast on. Like I had a really good time on a lot of stages, but I didn't have a lot of errors. I think for the day I only had 2 errors. I had one popper that refused to go down, and then I had one steel coin that I just completely missed because I went by it and didn't come back and shoot it.
Hmm.
That was it. And there were lots of people that were getting other penalties, and that'll start to add up for you. So again, it's that balance. It is still a balance of speed and accuracy, but it's definitely more balanced to slowing down a little bit,
Hmm.
which again has its own enjoyment for people, especially like myself, get a little older.
Oh, for sure.
But then if you get somebody that does show up that can do both, who's really fast, can run through a complex stage and switch and transition between all of those,
Hmm.
man, I tell you, they'll burn a stage down and they will blow anybody else's score out of the water.
Hmm.
The other thing is
Kyle.
I do well, yes, and he wasn't there yet. He wasn't there yesterday, unfortunately. But I will add though that I have been personally working on my cardio. So the stage I did the best on, I got second on, was the biggest stage, and there was a lot of movement on it. And
Hmm.
I was able to rip between the different positions on the stage and not feel winded at all. It was
That's
actually
awesome.
interesting because after the fact, I did it, and I was like, man, that's way different than what I would have been like in the past. So there are definitely advantages, again, to having your cardio a little bit up, where you may get that a little bit more so than USPSA, because yes, you are moving really fast in USPSA, and be able to control your heart rate is also important. But the stages don't last nearly as long as they do
Yeah,
for two gun stage.
that makes sense. Of
So I
course,
know I
right?
kind of like, but I would say definitely multi-gun is typically more difficult.
Oh,
And
yeah, which
I would
makes
definitely not
sense.
recommend, because actually when I started shooting the action sports, my goal was to start shooting multi-gun. That's where I wanted to
Really.
end up, but I started shooting USPSA and Steel Challenge first because it's only a single firearm.
Hmm.
So again, from a safety perspective, a challenge perspective,
Well,
USPSA
I even think a
plays
financial perspective too.
that is true too.
Which is
And
also
that's
why I believe that's
yeah,
why at our club we switched from multi-gun to two gun. Or I'm sorry, from three gun to multi-gun
yeah.
because it was like not everyone has a shotgun either. So,
Yeah, that was a good change that they
mhm,
made, and I will say I give credit to Hagen and his team for realizing that, and watching other two guns become popular, and realizing that they want to draw more people into the sport.
mhm,
That's how they're going to do it. And we actually had people that did show up that were new, that were shooting two gun because they only had the two guns,
that's awesome.
or they wanted to eventually get to three gun, but they saw it as a transition to go from like USPSA with one gun to doing two guns and eventually three guns. So
That's awesome.
um, yeah, and it's hard because you have to write the stages as such, and you have to figure out how you're
Hmm.
going to make it even.
Yep. So, of course, I know you kind of spoke about USPSA versus multi-gun, and you kind of talk about like your mindset shift. So, for you, of course, with this, you did these two competitions back to back.
Yeah,
Would you recommend that to somebody else to try out to do?
I think if you're at the skill level where you're shooting three gun or multi gun already, I would say go for it.
Okay.
It was the heat was an added challenge because it was 90
Oh,
plus
for
each day,
sure.
like we talked about.
Yeah.
So you have to take that into consideration as well. Like Kyle didn't make it the sex day. The sex day? That sounds terrible. I need to delete that out. It's terrible. And I'm gonna leave it in because every once in a while I make mistakes. It's fine. And anyway, so okay. Anyway, going back to it, Kyle was not feeling well the next day, so he opted to not go, which was the right decision, right?
Mhm. Oh, for
If you're not
sure.
feeling well, and even Hagen wasn't feeling as well the next day either.
Hmm.
So you have to understand, like, read your body and be like, say, hey, can I do this 2 days in a row?
Yep.
But then also, I think there's a part of me that says, if you're able to do this 2 days in a row at 90 degrees plus, like, it's kind of a how can I push my body, right? Like, can I still do these things? Am I still capable of, doing hard things 2 days in a row on my day off, right?
Hmm.
Getting up early, shooting the match, and then tearing the stages down at the end, right?
Yep.
So if you're up for that and that's the kind of thing that you enjoy, by all means, go for it.
Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. So, for you, what would you do differently for the next time you do a back to back weekend like that?
I would ask for better weather.
Other than that, because we're not God.
I know. Other than that, I think again, getting in a little bit of dry fire, even just a little bit ahead of time,
Yeah.
knowing that the especially for a classifier,
Yeah.
definitely doing that, or just getting out like a day before just to get the rust out or something like that might be a good idea.
Yep.
That I might change.
I think for me would have to be, so I guess in general for a competition, because I didn't do both matches, would have to be dry fire, yes, and two, probably getting to the range and just practicing long shots. Just
Yeah,
slow, steady, having forcing, probably setting up something where I don't know how I would do this, but because of the nature of the club's rules, but finding a way where I have an area where I can be quick and fast, but then have to transition to, okay, slow down and take this really tight shot. Maybe that just means I make a dot on the thing. It's like, all right, you're shooting that, or just get the head box. Maybe that's what I'll do. Just go really fast. I'm like, all right, that's eye box only over there.
yeah, that's true. Or starting out further back, and doing your tight shots to start, and then moving up and then going quick.
Yeah,
I just
the
do that
only
as well.
problem is I have no issues with that. It's going from fast to slowing
Oh, too
down.
slow. Yeah.
That's where I struggle. If I start slow, I have no problems. That's why I don't know if you've noticed, but whenever I see that, I actually purposely go for the harder target first, and then I can speed up. That's what I do
In-
personally.
Interesting. I usually go for the most open target first, just because like it's easier, and
Hmm.
it gives a chance for you to settle down. You don't have that problem as much because your draw and then on target is so fast. But
Hmm. Actually, no, never mind. Nope, never mind. I was wrong. I just lied. Or I'm incorrect. Nope, never mind. You're right. I do start with the easy target first because now I can just really slow down at the end. Yeah, no, you're
yeah,
right.
yeah,
Because I have a habit of, because I try to go so fast on my first shot, that I might throw my shot if I'm not careful. So especially because a lot of times there's a no shoot there, and I don't want to risk hitting the no shoot by accident. Never mind.
yeah. And I will say sometimes though too, like especially when you're moving, if your last shot is on a tighter target with a no shoot in front of it, there's always that risk of like going a little like moving before you're ready to like depart the position and then forcing your shot to move a little bit and hitting the no shoot.
Hmm.
I have done that
So
before.
yeah. So now that I think about it, maybe that's where I'll have to practice. Maybe I'll start at like 10 yards or whatever, get the thing, and I have to run up range, of course, make sure gun's at a safe position, safe up direction, and then have to
Yep.
run to like 15 or 20. And I'm like, all right, good luck.
Yeah.
Head box, maybe not eye box, but just head from
Sure.
there. I'm like, okay. Because I'll simulate like the popper or something at a distance.
Yeah. And for me, like a lot of the things I need to do is I don't necessarily risk the shots where there's a no shoot that's like the head of the no shoot is covering the body A zone of a
Hmm.
like a shootable target. The easiest way to lose points on that is just by shooting the C zone because it's easier. We practiced a little bit of that one time throughout recently, but
Yep.
you know, be having confidence in saying I can still hit this A zone that's above the head without hitting no shoots.
Hmm.
Right? It's the whole risk reward thing.
Yep. I know.
'Cause they lose a lot of points on that just
I
by
know.
not doing that.
I
So
know for me, because once again, because you and I are different in that way, you're more accurate than I am. So for you, you could do that better. For me, for that one, I just trust my speed. I'm like, I'm just going to say I'm
yeah,
fast enough to
yep,
where I can make it up, which most of the time I can, but not always. It just depends. So
yeah. And I will say too that having the head box be the entire head box being an A zone for the multi gun.
that's
That's like a
nice.
huge advantage for someone like myself who like shooting a head box. Like I see the head box, but yeah, no problem. I can get that, out to 15 yards, no problem. Um, Without really trying too hard. So there's some advantages to that as well too, where like the eye box is considerably smaller on a USPSA target, and I almost always shoot low on those two.
Hmm.
Used to be back in the day we had B zone, then they got rid of it
I've
because
heard.
people were just shooting at the head because it was much faster, and you
Oh,
probably
of
didn't lose a lot
course.
of points because you shoot the head because you get the B zone, you don't drop as many points in minor. But they were like,
Hmm.
no, you can't do that. We don't want to give you fun things. We want to make you force you.
That's awesome. So, do you have any closing thoughts for this episode, Phil?
Yes. So my thoughts on this would be if you're going to shoot, like look at the match type that you're going into it, and then do spend a little bit of time at least, like if you can look at the classifiers in advance, find the things that you're not great at and maybe just practice just those. If you can't practice the whole classifier, get it exactly set up, practice the things that you know you're going to get hung up on,
Hmm.
right? And then dry fire is really important too. And then for a 2 day match, especially in the heat, make sure that you're properly taking care of yourself. I know that sounds like a dad advice, and maybe I'll use that. I'll just transition that into my dad advice too.
Hmm.
I want to get your opinion too, obviously, in the match, but
Oh, totally. Yeah.
take care of yourself, because if you do, while it will suck shooting out in the heat for 2 days straight like that, you can make it. And then when you come
Hmm.
out of it, I always like to think if you don't die, you came out a little bit stronger in the end, right? And it's good for you to push the limits of your body from time to time, because
Hmm.
otherwise, like, if something really does come down to it and you're like, oh crap, now I poop as a fan and I'm out here
Hmm.
and I can't survive for more than a day, then you got problems.
Yeah, exactly.
So Tyler, what's your takeaway from shooting the classifier?
Yeah, so I think I've kind of hit on it already of how it's just the importance of just practice and dry fire, and how, of course, I was able to go back to my fundamentals, or at least the fundamentals that I've practiced. How, because I did exemplary, even though I didn't really prepare for this classifier as much as I would have in the past,
Yeah.
or any USPSA competition really, because I usually would try to at least get a range day in, get some dry fire in. But of course, I had other priorities in my life, with, of course, with work, of course, relationships, and just other things, to where I kind of chose to say, these are, what I did was I said, these are more important to me at the moment, which is true, truthfully. So shooting's fun, and it's a fun sport. Had a great time with the guys, and but of course, just prepping and just working on, not only just working on your strengths, but working on your weaknesses as well, because that's really where it really showed in my scores, where I did very well in my strengths, but I did really bad in my weakness.
Hmm.
So in that sense. So that would be kind of my closing thoughts of the match. So with my dad advice would be, or I guess my life advice, because I'm not a dad, but my life advice would be, I kind of mentioned it earlier. I believe I mentioned it earlier, but negative things are going to come. Hard times are going to come. Mistakes are going to be made. Don't dwell on that.
Mm.
It'll come, but don't dwell on it. Just let it go, adjust, problem solve, and just move on. I had every I've noticed that for a lot of my matches, for a few of my matches recently, where I would do great for like the first half, and then I would just have one stage that I would just tank or bomb or not do as well as I'd like, and it would just affect me mentally the rest of the day. And thankfully, with this match, it was there, but it definitely wasn't as bad. So I'll say that in life too, hard times are going to come, but especially as men, doesn't matter. You just got to get back up and just keep on moving forward. A righteous man will fall 7 times and he'll get right back up.
Hmm. No, that's really good, and I liked how you like drew a line back to the match, right? Because it can impact you. We did have somebody in our squad who was impacted by that, where they just
Hmm.
had some stages that didn't go well, and they ended up doing great overall in the
Oh,
final
yeah. Well,
scores.
it's literally
So,
the first
yep,
stage where it hit him.
yeah,
But
yep,
like you said, he did phenomenal.
yep, and it is hard, and you in
It
getting that
is.
that mental toughness does take a lot, and I think that having a bad time like that and having it realizing how it impacts you is just the way that we all grow,
Hmm.
right? And realizing, oh, I need to let go. And it was funny because that
Yep.
individual was like later in the day was like, I'm sorry guys, I should not be like this. I'm much better now. And you
Hmm.
could tell that changed. So
Exactly.
it was a good transition. And again, like I even think of like Zombie last year too. Like that first day, like I was so like
That's
down on
right.
myself, a few things that get me
Yeah.
down, and I did not do really well. And then the next day I was like, you know what? It's a different day, different set of guns. We're gonna try to head back
Yeah.
into it, and ended up
And you
moving up
rocked
7
it.
spots. So
What place did you get again?
11th, but I was
That's
also
what I
running a
thought.
I was also running a cheater shotgun,
Dude,
but
that's fine. But you're also, yeah, but you also practice and trained with that. Because even for me, once again, perfect example, I focused on my strengths. So day one, I did great. I did
yeah,
awesome with pistol and rifle. Day two,
yeah.
I tanked. It was so bad. I was so mad. I was like, I hate this. This is dumb. Why am I here? I didn't say that, but I'm like, this is. I had fun, but it was one of those things like, I just didn't care as much. Probably because I'm like, it's not. So thank you, Phil, for letting me borrow your shotgun. But it wasn't
Yeah,
my
no problem.
shotgun. It was other things. I was like, I just didn't really sweat as much. So I already had fun. I didn't care. So, but
Yeah, yeah. Again, and a lot of it just comes down to like when I switched over to that shotgun. Yes, it is mag fed, and it is definitely an advantage. But it's again more in line of a system that I'm more familiar with because
yep.
it's more set up like a rifle, or it actually feel more like a PCC. So again,
Hmm.
like we talked about earlier in the podcast, is finding out what works for you from a gear perspective. One thing may not be the same from another, whether it's again a red dot, a vertical grip, or like a mag fed shotgun with, I instead of like a traditional angled like grip on a shotgun versus a like pistol grip on a shotgun.
Hmm.
Those small things, just play in your strengths. That's actually okay. You get two data devices for this episode.
There you go.
That's the other thing I learned is in life, everybody has strengths and everybody has weaknesses.
Oh yeah.
There is a general consensus that when you are younger, that you need to spend more time fixing your weaknesses than working on your strengths.
Hmm.
There may be cases where that you do need to work on that, right? Like let's say you're just a jerk all the time, you need to probably work on being nicer,
Oh, for sure.
right? But especially when it comes to work related items or even shooting, I would say in this case, yeah, maybe you focus on your weaknesses here and there, but dude, if you're strong in somewhere, put a lot of time into that because that's where you're going to make your career. That's where you're going to make it in the shooting sports or any kind of hobby that you have. Like pour yourself into that area because number one, you're going to be better at it. So you're going to
Yes.
feel a lot better when you perform well. You're like, oh my gosh, I actually did that really well, right? And number two, if it's a weakness and you're trying to pour time into it, the percentage increase on like a weakness improving is going to be significantly less than working on a strength.
Hmm.
So again, it's all about your time and about happy with
No.
yourself too.
Well, I agree with that. It's funny. I actually had a conversation about this recently and how it's for me, like, of course, like I said, we've mentioned this earlier. You and I are both leaders, but my leadership style is I've come to learn for those who know the Bible, like I'm a Barnabas but I'm not a Paul. And I'm okay with that. So
Hmm.
many people like to be the great leader like Paul, like the hellfire, not maybe not hellfire, but like just a very like strong like influencer, like leader of leaders. Like that's what people want to be, but
Yeah.
realistically, no, not everyone's like that, and that's okay. I've come to learn I'm more of a Barnabas. I'm more of an equipper of leaders. I encourage leaders. I help
Hmm.
leaders bring them to their best potential. That's what I'm good at. And I'm okay with that because it's understanding that that's where I'm strong at. So I don't need to try to be a bad version of somebody else because that's maybe what's more socially acceptable, or maybe that's just something that was kind of an expectation that's been put upon you. But just be the best version of you, be the version that God created you to be. Don't try to be a bad copy of somebody else. So, of course, become more well rounded, improve on maybe like improve your weaknesses a little bit, but really refine your strengths.
Yeah. No, 100% on that. And I like how we talked about it and related it to leadership. And some people are like, "Well, I'm not a leader." Well, you in some aspect in your
No,
life, you are most likely a leader. Like
everyone's a
if you're
leader.
a dad, you're a leader in the
Hmm.
house.
Yep.
So again, kind of push on that. And again, that's a little different too because again, if you're a jerk to your kids, you probably need to work on that a little bit. But
Yeah.
I actually okay. So then I get three data devices. Man, they're just coming
Let's
out because
go, man.
we're talking about leadership here. So okay, so I actually had a really interesting conversation with a leader at my place of business
Yep.
recently, and a guy that I didn't really know really well, and a really good conversation with him. Come to respect him a ton out of this meeting. But one of the things that I had realized, actually, even prior in the week, having another conversation with another leader, was that the difference between a good leader and a bad leader is that a good leader has a set of principles and morals that they make judgments on every day, and they stick to those morals and principles.
100%. Yes.
Because when I became a leader, I remember saying, I have no idea what I'm doing here.
Hmm.
Right. And then I realized really quickly that most of the other leaders around had no idea what they were doing either. Some leaders have been doing it for a while, more experience, and they do have a good idea, but you're always going to run up against something you've never seen before. But the difference I was noticing in the good leaders were the ones that were making decisions based on, again, those principles and that moral code. And if you can
Yes.
continue to make decisions based on that, like asking that question, it doesn't matter if you screw up. Your employees or the people that are working with you, volunteers, whatever it may be, if they're like good employees or good volunteers, they're going to realize what's going on.
Hmm.
And they're going to realize that you had to make the decision, but you made it, and they may didn't like it, but at least you stuck to your morals.
Exactly.
I almost saved that one for next week because it's such a good one.
Yeah. That's awesome.
But
Well, cool. Well, let's say thank you, everyone, for listening to another exciting episode of Acceptable Accuracy. I really appreciate it. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. Feel free to reach out to us at
podcast at acceptableaccuracy.com.
exactly. So follow us on Instagram, YouTube. I am working on our Facebook page as well. I'll figure that out eventually. But either way, thank you so much, and we'll see you in the next exciting episode as we talk about dry fire.
Yay.